Welcome back to Bit Break. Here is everything you need to know about Percival Everett, who is very much the author of the moment. Not only is the author of the upcoming book James, which I will tell you more about in a minute, but I think is going to be one of the books of 2024, but he is also the author of the book behind American Fiction, a film which at the time I'm filming this is currently nominated for the Best Picture Oscar. By the time I upload this, we will know whether or not it won. Update, it won Best Adapted Screenplay, which is so cool, and I'm currently exhausted from staying up until 2:30 to watch that happen, but it was worth it. For a lot of you, you may have first heard of Percival Everett when his book The Trees was nominated for the Booker Prize, and he has his star has been on the rise ever since then, but you may not have known that The Trees was actually, I think, his 22nd novel. Percival Everett has written a lot of really good books. So I'm going to just give you the highlights here because I can't go through every single book. He has, I believe, written 24 novels in total, 4 short story collections, 6 poetry collections, and a children's book. So he is an incredibly talented writer, and I'm going to give you the highlights, the books that you might want to start with. Things that you should know about Percival Everett: he has a really amazing, very funny, very witty writing style. He writes these kind of satires and parodies, but often of really tough, really heavy, really brutal topics. Laughing but not knowing if you're allowed to be laughing is kind of a common experience when reading Percival Everett's books. And I'm sure you might agree, if you've seen the film American Fiction, you might feel the same way as well. So let's start with that one. The book behind the film American Fiction is actually called Erasure, and that was Percival Everett's 12th novel. He wrote it in 2001, and just like the film, it is about a writer who writes very intellectual books, which are brilliant but are not particularly popular, not particularly well received. And his agent keeps telling him that it's because publishers don't think that his books are black enough. And so, angrily, in response to this, the main character writes a kind of parody of what he thinks a book that is black enough might be like. And surprise, surprise, that book is a massive hit. I have to say, we love books that make fun of the publishing industry. The next 6 books I'm going to show you are all part of our Picador collection. So collect the whole set, you get these gorgeous white and colourful spines. They'll look really lovely together on your shelf. Starting with Damned If I Do. So this is one of Percival Everett's short story collections. If you want to get a flavour for Percival Everett's inventiveness in his writing and his wit, then this is a really great place to start, with these collection of really postmodern stories that show off his writing in such a great way. I Am Not Sidney Poitier is a parody. This has a main character called Not Sidney Poitier, that is his name, and the different chapters are inspired by different Sidney Poitier films. This is one for the film buffs. Assumption is a murder mystery. It's actually 3 murder mysteries in one, all connected by the same detective, and it has got clues so carefully seeded throughout this book that it's the kind of book you instantly need to read twice to see all of the clues that you missed. And then how to describe this one. So this is Percival Everett by Virgil Russell, but it's actually by Percival Everett, and it is a story within a story within a story. Percival Everett is a character in this story, just to confuse everyone, and he visits his dying father in a nursing home. And either this book is about his father writing the kind of story that he imagines his son might write, or it is the son imagining what his father might imagine that he might write. Yeah, try and get your head around that one. So Much Blue is about an artist who is painting a secret painting that he won't show anyone, not even his wife, and the painting is just a lot of blue. It is so much blue, and while painting this, he is sort of dwelling on the 3 most defining moments in his life. Telephone is very interesting because Percival Everett wrote 3 slightly different versions of this book and released them all simultaneously, with the reader having no idea which version they'd got, except for picking up on tiny clues on the front cover, namely the direction that the compass is pointing. Telephone was a finalist for the Pulitzer Prize for Fiction in 2021, and it's about a man going on a rescue mission after he finds a note in the pocket of a jacket that's a plea for help. And that brings us to The Trees, which was a really big breakthrough for Percival Everett. He already had such an incredible back catalogue, he already had a huge number of avid fans. So for some people, it may sound ridiculous to say that The Trees was a breakthrough moment, but I think this is the moment when he was really elevated to the household name that he is becoming today. The Trees is a sort of revenge fantasy. It's about a series of brutal murders in Mississippi, but at the scene of each crime, a second corpse is also found, and that body resembles that of Emmett Till. So the book really showcases what I was saying earlier about what Percival Everett is so brilliant at, which is combining really comedic writing with this unspeakable horror of his subjects and bringing them together so perfectly into something that you will never forget. He followed up from The Trees with Dr. No, in which he changes genre once again. This is Percival Everett's take on the spy thriller, and it stars a billionaire who wants to be a Bond villain, and the maths professor who he sets his sights on to help him get there. And finally, that brings us to James, which is coming out this year. I've got a proof here, and this book is absolutely brilliant. This is a reimagining of the story of Huckleberry Finn. And whether or not you have read the original Huckleberry Finn, James brings something brand new and is absolutely phenomenal. So it retells this kind of childhood adventure story that you may be familiar with from Huckleberry Finn, or you may just have heard of, but juxtaposes that with the true horrors of slavery. Because there is an enslaved character in the original Huckleberry Finn, his name is Jim, and a lot of what happens to him happens off page. He is not the central character in that story. And so Percival Everett is giving him a voice and telling the story of James. I found reading this book just gave me chills in such a good way, because I was constantly sort of racing to keep up with Percival Everett's amazing energy and quite how funny he is and quite how witty he is, but also quite how well he is constantly highlighting horrors to you. This period of history in America is perhaps surrounded by quite a lot of nostalgia, because there are quite a lot of charming childhood stories that go with it, but you will never think of it the same way after reading James, I promise you that. So this is my prediction of the book of 2024, the book that everyone is going to be talking about throughout this year, so make sure you get your copy. And these are my top 10 highlights of Percival Everett, and I would love to know in the comments below if you are a Percival Everett fan and which one of these has been your favourite. If you want more author spotlight videos like this, I will link to a whole playlist of them here, so do click through and have a browse, and I'll see you next time.